One day, out from the city, the small party saw a group of horsemen cantering toward them. Xenophon hoisted his spear and kicked the gelding into a run to meet them. Parmenion rode after him, while Tinus, Clearchus, and 3 other servants remained with the wagon. Parmenion guided his mount alongside Xenophon. "I think it is Leonidas," he shouted. The Athenian drew rein and waited, and Parmenion could see his concern. Spartan cavalry had been sent out into the Skiritis hills after 2 villages were hit by raiders, renegade mercenaries who had been dismissed by the authorities in Corinth. There were said to be more than 30 men in the raiding party. Shading his eyes, Parmenion could see Leonidas riding at the head of a large group of warriors. Behind him was his father, Patrocleon. Xenophon held up a hand in greeting, and Leonidas dragged on his reins while Patrocleon rode forward. "An ill day, Xenophon," said the red-bearded Spartiate. "My daughter Derae has been taken." "Taken? How?" Xenophon asked. "She was riding alone to the east of our column. I think she must have stopped by a stream and dismounted. I have a Thracian servant who reads tracks, and he said her horse must have run clear when they surprised her. They are heading north into the hills. We will join with you, of course," said Xenophon. Parmenion swung his horse's head and cantered back to the wagon. "Hand me the bow," he ordered Tinus. The man reached into the back of the wagon and lifted out a bow of horn and a goatskin quiver containing 20 arrows. Parmenion hooked the quiver over his shoulder and scanned the countryside. The men were heading north, Patrocleon had said, but by now they would know that Derae was part of a larger group, and it would make little sense to hold to their course. To the northeast was a heavily wooded line of hills beyond which Parmenion could see a high pass that swept northward. Without waiting for the others, he heeled the mare into a run and rode for the wooded slopes. "Where in Hades is he going?" asked Leonidas. "I don't know and I don't care," snapped Patrocleon. "Let's ride." The warriors set off for the north. Parmenion rode high into the hills, angling his mount toward the pass. The footing was treacherous here, scree and loose shale. He slowed the mare, dismounted, then led her up into the trees. On reaching safe ground, he tethered her to a bush and climbed a tall cypress tree. From its uppermost branches, he scanned the surrounding hills, seeing no sign of movement save for the dust of the hunting party as it galloped north. He stayed in the tree for some time and was just beginning to face the possibility of being wrong when several black and grey crows took off from the tree some 200 paces to his right. They seemed panicked, and he focused on the area, straining to see through the undergrowth. After a moment or two, he caught the glint of sunlight on metal and heard a horse whinny. Swiftly he climbed down the tree, mounted the mare, and set off at a run for the pass. He reached it ahead of the raiders and dragged on the reins. The mare whinnied and reared. Parmenion leapt from her back and swiftly hobbled her. Climbing to the peak of a tall, rocky outcrop overlooking the narrow pass, he slid an arrow from the quiver and notched it to the string. His heart was beating wildly, and there was a pounding pain behind his eyes. The headaches had been worse of late, waking him in the night and leaving him nauseous and shaken. Now he had no time to be concerned with petty pain. His reaction to the news of Derae's abduction had surprised him. She had been in his thoughts often, but he had never allowed himself to believe he could win her. Now, with the thought of her being taken from him for good, he felt a rising sense of panic and a realization that she was part of his dreams. A foolish dream, his mind screamed at him as he crouched, waiting for the raiders. Leonidas would never allow such a marriage. Marriage? He pictured Derae standing beside him at the sacred stone to Hera, her hand on his, the priestess binding their arms together with laurel leaves. Wiping his sweating palms on his tunic, he forced such thoughts from his mind and stared at the tree line. Several minutes later, the first of the scouts came into view. The man was sun-bronzed and dark-bearded, wearing a Phrygian helm with a metal crest and a red eye painted on the brow. He was carrying a lance. Beside him rode a warrior wearing a wide Boeotian helm of beaten iron. He was carrying a bow in his left hand with an arrow ready notched. Parmenion crouched down behind a rock and waited, listening to the steady rhythmic sound of hooves on stone. Then, risking a glance, he saw the main group, numbering more than 30. Riding out behind the scouts, he could see Derae, her hands tied behind her. There was a rope around her neck, being held by a warrior on a tall grey stallion. The man was wearing silver armor and a white cloak. To Parmenion, he looked like a prince from legend. Larus rode his stallion clear of the trees and tugged on the rope. The girl almost stumbled. He glanced back at her and smiled. What a beauty! There had been no chance yet to hear her screams, to enjoy her writhing beneath him. But that would soon but that would come once they had thrown off their pursuers. Spartans, the weak, livid counselors of Corinth, had all but wet themselves when he had talked of invading Spartan lands. Could they not see that the Spartans could be taken? If Thebes, Corinth, and Athens joined forces, they could destroy Sparta once and for all. But no, ancient fears held sway. Remember Thermopylae, they said. Remember the defeat of Athens 20 years ago. Who cared about events a lifetime in the past? At best, the Spartans could put 15,000 men in the field. Corinth alone could match half that number, and Athens make up the rest. Thebes and the Boeotian League could double the force. Dismissed, the shame of it burned at Laris. But now he had shown them. With a mere 40 men, he had raided deep into Spartan lands. True, they had found little gold, and the men were unhappy, but he had proved the point. If 40 could ride into the home of warriors and emerge unscathed, what would be the result when 40,000 marched in? He looked up to see the scouts riding into the pass. Suddenly an arrow flashed through the air to strike Xanthias in the throat. With a terrible cry he pitched from his mount. Instantly all was chaos. Men leapt from their horses, taking shelter behind the rocks. Laris slid to the ground, dragging Dore down beside him. A young Spartan stood in full view of the men. "Release the woman," he called, "and there will be no further killing." "Who speaks?" yelled Laris. "A man with a bow," answered the warrior. "And why should we trust your word, man with a bow?" "Look behind you," shouted the archer. "Can you see the dust cloud? You are trapped. If you wait, you will die. If you advance, you will die. List your choices if you will." "I see no one up there with you," said Laris, rising and drawing his sword. "Do you not? Then it must be that I am alone. Attack me and find out. Show us your men. Your time is running out, along with my patience. If you do not have the wit to save your comrades, perhaps another man among them will make the choice for you." The warrior's words stung Laris. Already his men were far from happy, and now this lone archer was questioning his leadership. A man rose from behind a rock. "For Athena's sake, Laris, let the woman go, and let us get away from here." The leader turned to Dore. His knife slashed the thongs binding her hands, and he lifted the noose from around her neck. He turned to see the Spartan riding toward him, his bow looped over his shoulder. Laris scanned the rocks but could see no one. He licked his lips, convinced the bowman was alone, longing to plunge his blade into the Spartan, to see his lifeblood draining from him. The warrior smiled at him. "I have told the others to let you pass, and you can trust my word. But I should ride fast. I do not speak for those who follow." The men ran for their horses. Laris suppressed the urge to strike out. He could hear the hoofbeats of the Spartan force. Grabbing his stallion's mane, he leapt to the beast's back and galloped through the pass. As he had expected, there was no one there. No archers, no hoplites, no slingers, just rock and shale. He could feel the eyes of his men upon him. He had been tricked by one Spartan. One man had made him surrender his prize. What would they say in Corinth?